Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's the return of the movie!
And hello and welcome back to the Return of the Movie, the podcast about sequels, reboots, and franchises. I'm Ben.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Alex.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for coming back for our Halloween extravaganza. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us out here on the channel. And if you like this, check out our other shows, Too Fast, Too Movie, where Abraham and I are currently covering Attack on Titan. And we also have other fun pieces. We have Full Stop, which I believe all of us now are doing to some extent on this panel. However, it is the baby brainchild of Matt over here. So do give him credit. He deserves it. And last but not least, be sure to come by the channel if you are listening on audio, as again, you probably just heard a bunch of shows that you don't recognize. That's where we do all of them. And that is, again, youtube.com/Scope Productions. Really helps us out. And also, if you're on audio, please like and subscribe. Usual deal. Helps other people find the podcast, and we greatly appreciate it. Now, without further ado, Alex, which Holla Bungaloo are we covering today?
I don't know if you guys have wondered this, but what would it be like if a MySpace page that unironically welcomed you to its twisted mind and autoplayed Korn came to life and remade a horror classic? Well, look no further than 2007's Halloween. A white trash backstory will leave you feeling sorry for Michael, only to throw that bullshit out the window 40 minutes in because he kills indiscriminately and has no moral compass. And if you love tits as much as Harvey Weinstein, you'll surely love this film, full of not just boobs, but bloody dead boobs. Yay! This movie may be full of gore, death, and destruction, but the scariest part to me is that every teen who survives is about to go to college during the Great Recession. And that's the real unhappy ending. So.
Oh, gosh. Yikes. Yeah, so true horror story from, I nearly said Harvey Weinstein, but I meant to say Rob Zombie. I don't know what that says about the situation, but it does say a couple things. Matt, who else is responsible, casted in? There's a fine line on this one.
Many layers.
So, Rob Zombie actually did a lot of cool stuff with the casting in this movie. So I'm going to be sprinkling my fun facts in for this. You have Scout Taylor Compton as the new Laurie Strode. You have Malcolm McDowell, who you all know from Clockwork Orange, which is partially why he got the role he did now. So that's the first of many homages made in this movie. The second is that Sheriff Lee Brackett is played by Brad Dourif, who, if any of you have ever seen a Child's Play series, he's the voice of Chucky.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
You have Sherry Moon Zombie, which is an homage to his wife, Sherry Moon Zombie, playing Mrs. Myers. You have Tyler Mane as the new Shape, the adult Michael Myers. One of the other significant cast members that I want to point out is Danielle Harris, who plays Annie, the best friend, the one that got her slit throat in the car in the original movie.
Yes.
So she's kind of developed a reputation as a scream queen. Her first Halloween movie appearance was Halloween 4, where she was the main character in Halloween 4. She played, I think, 12-year-old Jamie, who was, in that timeline, she's Laurie's daughter. And so the entire plot of Halloween's 4, 5, and 6 is that Michael is stalking his niece now, who's played by Danielle Harris. So this is actually her fourth time being in a Halloween movie.
Okay.
She also did stuff like Urban Legend throughout the 90s. So it's like, there's some real names attached to this. And it's not just that it was directed by the guy from White Zombie. He also made a number of well-received horror movies before this. So mainly Devil's Rejects and House of a Thousand Corpses. Both of which lean very much into that white trash, kind of depraved underbelly of rural America aesthetic. Like, that's something that's very, very much in Zombie's wheelhouse and has been for a long time. So if you were familiar with either of those movies, you probably could have guessed that it was going to be like that going in, but not many people did. So the other fun fact is that part of the reason why this movie was a remake and not a sequel to Halloween 8 Resurrection is because the original producer of the first 8 movies was killed in a terrorist attack.
Oh, gosh.
In Jordan, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It was either that or Israel. I don't really remember the details. I just know that the son took over the property and decided to take it in a different direction, which is how we got the remake and its sequel. John Carpenter fucking hated this. He hated the portrayal of Michael as anything other than a soulless killing machine. He really just wanted Michael to be this like as inhuman of a presence as possible.
One of the things for me on this movie was like I really appreciated what was trying to be done. We're going to talk about some of the problems that very glaringly exist, not necessarily entirely from a storytelling point, but more of a depravity standpoint, which we'll expand upon in a little bit. That's one of my main issues with this film. But I kind of appreciated the fact that he was trying to bring some more lore and depth to Michael Myers, but it felt like such a major departure from the vision of the original movie.
Mm-hmm.
And the fan base of this franchise is kind of split right down the middle. Some of them like that it tried to do something different, and that this film is kind of a pretty big love letter to other horror movies in a lot of different ways, and so some people really appreciated that. Others kind of side with John Carpenter's side of the debate, where it's Michael really should only have ever been portrayed a certain way.
Yeah.
I actually read a story that Danielle Harris wasn't originally offered the role. She heard about the film being made at a convention, and she like got her agent to pitch her to be in the movie, and she got it because she agreed to be like topless the whole time that she's being killed because she hadn't done something like that. And I have to say, I think she's one of the better actors in the movie for sure. I think she actually does a really, really good job.
Yeah, I
just like that she survives, that somebody else survives for once.
Yeah. It was weird.
Now she gets murked in the
oh, damn it, really?
Yeah, yes, of course.
Everybody fucking dies in the sequel. Like almost everybody dies, and depending on which ending you see, everybody does die in the sequel.
Oh gosh. My whole, I was genuinely shocked. That is a character that, by all rights of not just slasher movie logic, but just, blood loss, shouldn't have made it out alive at the end. She was out for a while, I feel like, in that state.
Also, thinking of that scene, I was, watching it, and I was like, God, Michael Myers has just a built-in stud finder system in him somewhere, because somehow he always is able to drive a knife straight into a stud in the wall that keeps that kid up on the wall. Because regular drywall would just crumble. He must be finding a stud.
I mean,
well, it was a wooden door in the original too. It was one of those single door things.
I think my headcanon now is that his abusive father was at one point a contractor, because that makes sense for rural America.
Well, there's a kill in Halloween 4 where he takes a shotgun and he doesn't shoot the girl he kills. He impales her on the wall with the shotgun.
Oh my god. That is the most metal fucking thing ever.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to be running a little...
He has a wall fetish.
Jesus Christ. So we're going to be running a bit of a comparing and contrasting element today. So we're actually going to talk about both of these movies in tandem. I believe for everyone, though, this is because we haven't talked too much about the continuities as of yet. This is the fourth?
Yes, okay, so the last time we left off with Halloween 3, that was the second continuity. 1 and 2 are their own thing. Halloween 3 is its own thing. But because everybody hated Halloween 3 upon release, they did Halloween 4, which goes back to the original timeline, and then they did 4, 5, and 6. Carpenter and Jamie Lee Curtis and Deborah Hill and all of them, all of the original brain trust of the original franchise, wanted nothing to do with it, so the only returning face were the Akkad family, the producers, and Donald Pleasance. And we got new regular Danielle Harris in number 4. But 4 was good, 5 is bad, and 6 just goes off the fucking rails. But it goes off the rails with Paul Rudd. But because
Is
it went
that good,
off,
though.
I mean, a guy gets electrocuted into having his head blown up, and that's maybe the most spectacular scene in Six.
That sounds like it's a kill from Scary Movie, but do go
It
on.
honestly does feel that way. But after Six got a really bad reputation, and Six was the last movie Donald Pleasance made before his death. Anyways, Halloween 7 was commissioned, and Jamie Lee Curtis wanted to come back and do one more, and she wanted it to be a proper send-off to the franchise. So what 7 did is that it wiped the slate clean and went back to the original status quo of only 1 and 2 are canon. 7, and I'm going to hold off on talking about the plot of 7 until we get to the 2018 remake because it's more relevant. 7 ends with her cutting off Michael Myers' head, and it's supposed to be this big triumphant, this is definitively it. But it made money. And so Halloween 8, aka the one with Tyra Banks and Busta Rhymes, where Busta Rhymes kung fu fights Michael Myers and says the classic line, "Trick or treat, motherfucker," was commissioned, where Jamie Lee Curtis gets killed in the first 20 minutes, and then the movie goes on for another 70. So, Halloween Resurrection was bad. So
she pulled a, yeah, I'm free today.
So that's 3 continuities so far. 2 based off of 1 and 2, and then there's the movie 3.
Yeah.
And then this is number 4, which is the remake.
Okay. So this was the 4th continuity, and how many... So there was 1 sequel to this, or 2?
There was 1. There were supposed to be more, and actually the reason why Blumhouse even got the rights for 2018 was because New Dimension dropped the ball on Halloween 3. Like, I don't remember why it didn't get... Like, the second one wasn't really well received critically or commercially. And so I think that they just kind of lost steam with making them. But because they didn't make Halloween 3 past a certain point, they lost the rights, and then Blumhouse
Interesting.
got them.
It was...
And John Carpenter was a huge asset in getting the rights to Blumhouse because he wanted them to have it. But that's actually my fun fact for the next movie. So,
okay. There's all these layers. This is the podcast I was excited for, not because of the movies we were covering, but because this was our chance to actually talk about the whole franchise. All right, now without further ado, Alex, do you have a bit? What are we doing for Halloween 18?
Do I have a bit? I don't know if I have a real consciousness or if this is all just a bit. Anyway. Like Imagine Dragons or the Sweetie Meal at McDonald's, 2018's Halloween is a corporate cash grab that's scientifically cooked up in a lab to make our lizard brain neurons light up at the prospect of something exciting and new, while using the same bullshit mix as ever. Reoccurring cast member? Check. Just enough comedy to let you know we're not taking this too seriously? Check. Ignoring all the sequels from the last 3 decades and hoping you do too? Check. And if you think I'm over-exaggerating, the director for this movie is currently in pre-production for a sequel of The Exorcist starring Ellen Burstyn. Will we ever get new movies? No. And you know why? Because the remix of the soundtrack in the Halloween Kills trailer really had me pumped, so I'm part of the problem. And at the end of the day, I'm just glad John Carpenter is getting that bag and doing what every person in Hollywood can only dream of. Continuing to get fat fucking residuals and royalty checks off a project you did decades ago.
So for anyone not watching the video podcast, you should, to see the light in my eyes die. Multiple, like literally just from the dead beginning of that read, because that is exactly what this is. I have so many feelings, but I have to hold them back. Matt, what's the cast?
Jamie Lee Curtis is coming back for Halloween H40, 40 years later, also known as Halloween 2018. Nick Castle, who played Myers in the 1978 movie, comes back briefly. It's the scene where she's looking into the window and then she shoots the gun at the mirror.
Okay.
That's the scene he's back for. The person who plays Myers for the rest of the time is James Jude Courtney. Andy Matichak, Judy Greer, Dylan Arnold, and this is a big cast. There's like lots of characters that are around for like 5 minutes and they all just fucking die. So like I'm not gonna list them all. Directed by David Gordon Green and written by him and Danny McBride. Yeah, so I'm just picturing Eastbound and Down every time I see this movie now. Yeah, I was this is there's a couple of different trends that are like at work here. The first is comedians trying to make horror movies. Jordan Peele, these guys, actually like Jim Carrey actually tried making horror at one point.
That what?
He should just be referencing 23. His real life.
Alex, that was mean.
It's pretty horrible to me. Keep going, Matt.
Yeah.
No, really, I have so many Jim Carrey questions now, but we're focused on Halloween.
There's the fun fact is that John Carpenter was kind of helpful in Blumhouse Studios getting the rights to Halloween, and when Danny McBride and David Gordon Green decided to make their movies, they had a pitch for 3 movies set up.
Oh gosh.
And they had to pitch it to Jason Blum and John Carpenter together.
Oh man, the sweat in that room.
Carpenter was the one that greenlit this movie. Not only that, he also returned to work on the movie actively for the first time since Halloween 3, in which he did the score.
Oh shit. Okay.
So he kind of has fingerprints on this movie, or at least enough of them. And well, this at any rate, this is the most involved he's been with the franchise in 40 years. So, or 36 or whatever it was. But well, yeah,
that's sad because I think this is the worst of the bunch. In all honesty,
that we've seen so far, out of the 5 that we've
seen so far, yes. I will
even worse than Halloween 3.
Here's the thing: Halloween 3 was bad. But it was like, it was enjoyably bad. It was a B movie through and through.
I think part of the thing is that I've seen the rest of the movie, so I know just how bad this franchise can get.
And this is like not even it.
Oh no! There's at least like a production value and a legitimate craft behind this movie, and a lot of the others don't have that.
It's like not great, but it's not that bad.
Because, okay, so I'm going to, for anyone familiar with your channel, I'm going to say something very familiar that Abraham has said on this show, one of our other panelists. To me, one of the worst things to me is a boring movie. Not a bad movie, but a boring movie. And this was a boring movie.
I just think there were too many characters, ultimately. There's a lot going on in this movie, and there's like Laurie Strode, like the whole point is that this is Laurie Strode's big return to the screen.
Yeah.
And she's not even in a lot of the movie. Like she does things, she has agency, but she's not even the main character.
No, it's this film, like it feels like it's trying to do a lot of things at once and it doesn't have focus. There's no concrete main character. You could argue Michael Myers, but in order to make an antagonist the main character, you actually have to give them character development. So it's not Michael Myers when you consider it that way.
I felt like between the two, it was like 2007 had zero tension. He's there, you're dead. He's there, you're dead. He's there, you're dead. The only tension is coming from like the end when it's him and Laurie in the house, which for me, the best part of the movie, I think, was like the last
scene
like
was fantastic.
10, 15
hands down
minutes and the ending of that. But this one, I feel like it definitely had that John Carpenter feel of like the tension and some of the suspense building, which I don't know, I feel like is pretty necessary for a horror movie. You know, he's doing plenty of killing, so there's no lack of that. But, you know, there's also, like, this tension of him just, like, coming in. Also, the scene where he He's in the front, and then you see his face, like the reflection in the window. I was like, ooh, good shot. And then the woman's on the phone, and you see him walking next to the house. She's like, oh yeah, I'll be sure to lock my door. And then he comes in and just in the back of the neck.
Yeah.
Oh, during the long take, yeah.
Yeah.
What a fucking great take.
There were moments in this film that I thought were decent, but my issue was just like everything kind of came down to a storytelling piece for me on this one, and just the fact that I was just like, I don't fucking know what's happening. Like Jamie Lee Curtis is I just smacked the hell out of my mic. Jamie Lee Curtis is back, and like she's just like, there was so much familial drama that was strung up into this thing. There were just like a little bit, I felt like I was watching a CW show at times. Like there were just enough things that were taking me out of it that were not really imperative to the story. And I feel like there was such a divorce between like the B plot and the actual thematic elements of a fucking slasher movie that I just didn't, my eyes just rolled into the back of my head.
So one of the weird things about the plot of this movie is that it's actually remarkably similar to the plot of Halloween 7. So let me get into it. Halloween 7, oh god, I forgot the director of that one, was supposed to be the final send-off to the franchise, at least for Jamie Lee Curtis, until she came back and did this. And the plot of it is that it's a sequel to Halloween 2. Laurie Strode has fled Haddonfield. She's changed her name and is living in California with her son under pseudonyms. And she's a single she's like a traumatized single mother who is like super overprotective of her son, played by Josh Hartnett. By the way, young Joseph Gordon-Levitt is in that movie as well. He gets an ice skate to the face.
Spoilers.
First 5 minutes of the movie.
Okay, well, that's fine.
And the entire thing is that she won't really tell her past, and so he doesn't really quite know why his mother's being so like repressive, and so there's a lot of like familial drama there.
Yeah.
Except it's limited to just 2 people. And the whole cast is smaller. Like the group of teens that he stalks at the end of the movie, it's Josh Hartnett, his girlfriend, and their 2 friends. And they're like, the cast is super small, and it's like a kind of a way more intimate version of the story we're seeing here.
I feel like that on paper sounds like a better movie.
It was written by Kevin Williamson, who, as you guys might remember, and as anybody who has been following this podcast might remember, wrote the first Scream movie.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, like, it sounds very Scream-like.
Well, I mean, yeah.
And, well, that's the kind of... So I'm presuming that was an actual halfway decent movie, if that's the case.
I think it's one of the better sequels, and there seems to be a consensus on the fan base that it's definitely up there. I haven't seen the movie in years. Who knows how well it's aged by this point, because, you know, it's got replaced by almost something that was pretty damn close to the same exact movie.
Yeah.
Like, it's Laurie getting over her trauma about something that happened a long time ago, and how her family suffers as a result of that.
Ben, I do wonder if part of your issues with the plot might have to do with the fact that this was like written as a trilogy. Like, this movie wasn't written to be the end. So just from what I'm getting from the trailer for the next movie, I feel like there was a lot of exposition setting us up for the next movie, because the next movie seems like it's gonna have 0 exposition, all action.
If that is the case, then good, kind of, but I'm also of the opinion, like, we've been talking about movie trilogies, sequels, and reboots for like well over a year now, and I'm thoroughly of the opinion that every movie, even if it is like part 1, part 2, part 3 of a trilogy, should have a plot that you can follow along with regardless. So, like, there should still be bits and pieces that you're like, I'm confused, but I understand what the general motivations are. Like, just going back towards...
I felt like, you know, they're trying to show how deeply this affected Lori that now it's affecting like a third generation. Like her daughter grew up kind of traumatized. I also fucking love Judy Greer. And then now her granddaughter's involved. And it's sort of this like, oh, like she's hysterical and she just needs to get over it. And she was right in the end. I also loved the part where Judy Greer is like, Mom, help us. I can't do it. And he like shows up and she's like, gotcha, bitch.
Yeah, I'll agree. There were good moments, and like the fact like, and there are things here that do work. But I think the things that do work are inherent to the story that they are trying to tell versus how they tell the story. So like, and again, the fact that Matt cited a movie that was made earlier by pretty much the same exact design, this is a story that's been done before, essentially.
Yeah.
And this is a story that has a clean blueprint, and like there's really interesting psychological like commentary and like character development for Judy's character. But in this one, there's just not enough focus on what the movie's actually about that like I'm having the entire time I was watching, I'm like, okay, now he's gonna go kill this kid. Oh, okay, kid's got a gun. Oh, and the parts of this movie that like went in places that they didn't need to go, which
part of it is that part of the philosophy with this movie is, and the biggest departure between this and part 7, is that they wanted to reestablish Michael as just this emotionless killing machine who's doing these things for no reason.
And
although you could argue that he definitely has a reason because he's coming back and targeting Lori again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
like they're not even related in this one because the twist, the brother sister twist, was introduced in part 2,
so
that got taken out. So they're not even related.
Yeah, but that's such a weird thing because I feel like her motivation would make for why she like locks everything up would make so much sense if you kept like even just part 4 as canon. Like that's
my fun fact for part 7. Speaking of which, there's apparently a scene that was written for part 7 that would have tied it into the original continuity.
Oh shit.
Where she fakes her death and gets away and then leaves her daughter with her husband at the time. And the daughter would have been the Danielle Harris character. And in part 6, the daughter dies.
Okay.
And there would have been a thing in part 7 where she finds out about it.
Oh, shit.
There's a rumored deleted scene. So it's like those two timelines were almost the same continuity, but because that scene's not there, they're not.
Interesting. With this film, the 2018 in particular, I felt like there was just a lot of pieces that were just unnecessary towards the story's movement, and there were like even just going towards like a couple, just like some of the kills and like tension pieces, like the whole scene with the kid and his dad, they're going out hunting, the dad's like the prisoners are all escaped, and like, by the way, it's very clear that these are like all inmates by the way that they're dressed. So I wasn't expecting the first thing the dad was like, oh, let me go out and check that they're okay. Didn't see that coming. I was like, okay, cool. We're just in stupid people getting killed rules now. Great. I've seen Scream. Let's do this. Like
all I could think about was that I was like, who is this little like Billy Elliot kid in this movie? Like, Papa, yeah. I just want to dance. It's like, I'm like, that's a little interesting.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay. That's one of the things. It's just like this kid had so much character development that was non-thematic, and we were just going to kill him anyway. We didn't like leave him alive or anything. It would have been cool if he survived. We didn't get to see him dance
at the end. The end credits are an interpretive dance.
Yeah, the scene, I think the plot line that bothered me the most with this movie was the stuff with the babysitter and the kid, because you don't see them for the last half hour, because the babysitter gets killed, and the kid treats it like a fucking joke after they've been like kind of bonding throughout the movie.
Oh,
and so like he just like the scene is played for comedy, and that was just kind of like, this is easily the most sympathetic character death in this movie, and it's like the hardest one to watch because it's like a little kid who is completely powerless to stop it, and it was just like, really, that's how you're playing the scene? It wasted so much screen time to just end it that way and then not even go back to it for the rest of the movie.
When we've talked about this before, it's a very insecure thing to do for a movie, to undercut an important moment with a joke. Doctor Strange. But the
worst example of this that I've ever seen is in fucking Endgame, where it's Infinity War, where Drax is pretending to
be invisible.
That is one of the most insulting scenes. I felt so insulted by that scene.
And it's a common.
Whenever Disney bought Star Wars, they're doing the same thing over there too.
Alex, you're entirely too on point with your fucking synopsis reads, because I'm pretty sure you had a bit in there about that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like, place. Oh my god, we're not taking. And the thing is too is like, there's plenty of like places where it's super acceptable. Like the stuff with the cops, hilarious. That's the part of the movie where you're gonna put it in. I like that they make the relationship with the babysitter and the kid really funny and like kind of realistic. And like that's great comedy, because I think that's part of where the 2007 movie lost me, is like it's taking itself so fucking serious. I'm like, okay, edgelord.
Those edgy ass podcasters in the beginning.
The 2008. We haven't even touched on the fact that there were podcasters in the 2018 version.
Well, it's like literally every character who drives the plot gets killed like 5 minutes after they get introduced. And so like the fact that both podcasters get killed right away was a shock to me, because I figured one of them would have survived and gone to Haddonfield, which is what would have set Laurie off again. But wouldn't that have made sense?
Nah.
What is this franchise's obsession with killing... What is this franchise's obsession with killing people in, like, grimy bathroom stalls?
There's a scene in 7 that happens that... There's a bathroom scene in 7, too!
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure it happened in one of the other movies as well. Like, can people just shit in peace? Come on.
I did Jurassic Park. We know the answer is no.
But, like, the thing is, like, I guess in 2007 we have like this like Samuel L. Jackson-esque dude, and I don't know, it's just like everybody in 2007 seems like a weird dime store version of who they would cast if it was a good script and they had a lot more money. And it's just like there's no tension, versus like, as dumb as the death is for like the 2018 version, at least that whole sequence is like, I thought it was pretty well played out, where she like is going to the bathroom and he like comes in and is trying to get the guy's attention. Then he walks around and he's like, what's happening? And then he sees the guy in the mechanics, like and like his little jumpsuit or whatever, it's a large adult man. His jumpsuit mechanics thing is gone. And he's like, what is happening? And then that's getting cut in with her in the bathroom. And like I thought that sequence at least had really good like tension, and you were like, oh man, these people are gonna get killed. And I like that they got killed after they went to the sister's grave, which really stupid horror movie lore. How the fuck does he even know where his sister is buried? Can he read? Yep. Can he look at a cemetery like map and be like, oh well, she's in this plot in the A12 section of the cemetery? Like,
this is even
he's in the original, he's framed as such a inhuman force of nature, you don't even think to question it in that one.
I feel like one of my things right now is like the 2007 version, like at least there was an attempt to, and I want to talk a little bit more about the 2007 version, but I feel like we're going to have to put a trigger warning up. the 2007 version, they at least establish who he is as a character. And there's like room for understanding who he is, what he does, and like what he knows. But in the 2007 version with Rob Zombie, he ends up just fucking knowing his way like back to the house and everything.
Yeah, and also like the Danny Trejo, who, I mean, always a pleasure to see on screen.
I left him out of the cast list. I forgot about that.
Always a pleasure to see him on screen. I love it every time he's up there. I like it. Would have made more sense, and I think it would have made other deaths more impactful if he had let Danny Trejo live. Because then it just like invalidates the like first third of this movie as like, well, why did we get any backstory? It doesn't matter. He's just killing people.
Hey, Ben here. This is a trigger warning for the rest of the conversation where we'll be talking about sexual assault. If this is not something you want to hear, please stop listening to the podcast, as the rest of the conversation will feature this heavily, considering that the Rob Zombie movie has a ton of this content, and more than even most of our panelists are comfortable discussing. Thank you, and if you stick around, hope you enjoy.
Why do we have to, we'll put a trigger warning up here, why do we have to watch like a very graphic rape scene from people who are written like aliens who are trying to pretend to be evil humans? Like, not written like human people in the fucking slightest. And it's like, oh, he's gonna kill these guys because they raped someone. No, he's gonna kill them because they're simply there.
Okay, real quick, we're about to dive in on the Rob Zombie thing, which is something that I feel like we all on the panel have been dancing around. Massive trigger warning for both sexual violence and, I guess, endangerment of children. I mean, that's kind of a given, but okay, sexual endangerment of children. Let's just put it there. Okay, so Alex, you and I had a fun little chat on Discord of what the fuck when we were watching this. I believe like not even a couple minutes in, and like we see sexualizing of a teenager. I have to pull up that whole conversation.
It's literally, I looked at the timestamp. I think it's by the time we hit 4 minutes and 30 seconds, we get him like telling Rob Zombie's wife that her teenage daughter is fucking hot and has a great ass. He screams at a baby. He yells and is like abusive towards Michael. And then he's like violent towards his wife. And I'm like, we are literally 4.5 minutes in.
It's almost comical just how quickly all of that happened.
It was like, literally, and I'm like, this is not how people talk or function. It just simply is not. And it's like, again, it's this whole thing of like, I don't know. I just like am a big true crime fan, and you definitely get people that are like, oh yeah, the serial killer had a really terrible childhood. It's like, yeah, plenty of people have really terrible childhoods. That sucks. That doesn't mean they go out and kill people. Like, it doesn't, why does it need to be reasoned with?
So one of my things with that movie is I was understanding what it was trying to, I understood what it was trying to do for Michael Myers' character. I'm like, okay, so we're now adding this element, and like it very on the nose says like, oh, he was created by the perfect storm of both internal and external forces in order to become this serial killer. I can see Alex rolling her eyes over on the Zoom chat, but like I understood what the attempt was there. I understand portraying that kind of situation in order to tell this kind of story, and I don't think that it's necessarily not valid. What I did have a problem with, however, and this is something that I'm in the middle of doing research on for another project, is the choices for framing and the choices for sort of the, like, how a lot of these elements were portrayed. So, like, I have so many questions about Rob Zombie now, but like in any of the shot, like there's just blatantly an ass shot of this teenager before the dad makes the comment of like, oh yeah, she's fine, or whatever she says. I don't remember because that kind of like just got immediately repressed. But that's not something that happens once in this film. There's other teenagers that are engaging in sexual activity that we do see nude, and it's not necessarily the fact that teenagers are having sex or that we're seeing them nude. It's the fact that the framing is designed more to titillate and excite the audience than it is just to tell the fucking story.
Yeah, they're just like they're there to be there.
Trend historically in horror movies. That's been going on in slasher movies for a long time.
And I think it's important to call out though. If it's a I don't care if it's a long trend.
Let me clarify. That's not a defense. I'm
okay,
not
gotcha.
This movie. I'm not defending those choices, but it's like it's way worse here. And part of the reason is that Rob Zombie's kind of aesthetic is this just like white trash depravity. Like, because a lot of the other horror movies have been kind of around the similar idea. Yeah, for me it's hard because like I really, really, really enjoy that. You know, they didn't just do the Gus Van Sant thing and they just did a shot-for-shot remake like what he did with Psycho.
Yeah.
They legitimately tried to do something different here, and they tried to tell a much different story. And because even then, it's like you could make the argument that Michael is the main character in this movie the entire way through. He's the one with the most character development, and he's the one with the objective that he's trying to accomplish at the end. And unlike the original one, he's not trying to kill his sister, at least not initially. He's trying to save what's left of his family.
Yeah.
I think they should have gone deeper with that idea, because the entire framing it's supposed to be this cycles of violence and how it just tears this family apart.
Yeah.
Had they committed more fully to that idea, I think this movie could have been a lot more special, because like the original ending of this movie, there was a different ending plan for this movie, and the ending that we got is after the scene in the house at the like I think it's before the point where she has the gun and is about to train it on him. The cops show up at the house, and Loomis is still alive. He survives this one. He just gets the hell beaten out of him.
Yeah.
And he talks Michael down.
Oh shit.
And Michael decides in the end to let her go. And the cops shoot him anyway.
Oh, thus continuing the. Okay.
Yeah, and so that's the original ending of this movie. It was changed into what we have now, and what we have now is probably the most effective horror in the entire movie.
Completely agree.
I think my main issue is that
thematically it changes a lot.
Yeah, I think my main issue is that like a lot of the sex scenes are almost the same or very similar to the original movie, but just like more edgy and worse. Like they're not better in any way. Like I'm just like this is like almost the same line. Oh, they like totally fucked up the like ghost sheet thing. It was like, haha, let's just cut that down to like 2 seconds. I'm like, that was like one of my favorite parts of the original movie. If you're gonna do it, at least fully do it. You know, like in 2018, it's just kind of like a little like homage to it. They're not doing the same thing. But yeah, my main thing, I'm like, okay, like these kids are horny and I get that, but what it is this adding, it's not adding anything. Not that, yeah, I mean, the same can be said for the original, but again, this is doing the original, but just like edgier and worse.
My thing in like, there's always like so much to read into with nudity and all these aspects, and again, there's nothing inherently wrong with nudity or sexual activity or like portraying the fact that teenagers have sex lives, because they do. The issue for me always comes from like how you decide to structure those scenes, how you decide to shoot those scenes, how you decide to frame them, and I'm not even just talking about framing as in like compositionally. I'm talking about framing from like just like, what is the context of the scene? What is the moral what is the moral and thematic elements that you're trying to put into this scene. And like for so much of this movie, it's like for a main portion of it, and I know that this was like a minor thing in the original one, but there's just a lot more focus on sex with the teenagers than there was in the previous one. And that's saying a lot, because there was a lot of focus on sex in the first movie. But in this one, it feels a lot more like it's the only thing on every kid's mind, to the point where the main character isn't even like... Because in the first movie, you can make an argument that the main character was kind of having a coming-of-age moment with their own sexual identity. But in this one, it's just like, oh, okay, he thinks I'm cute. I'll think about it. Okay, you convinced me. Like
she's not the innocent hero.
Yeah, and it's not that like you need the innocent moral objectivity. It's the fact that it's not doing anything in the story.
Well, the other thing is that it's like in the original one, it's not like unnatural.
Yeah,
like they're talking about, you know, all the classes that they have to deal with, and then and then there's a line of dialogue like, "Oh, hey, by the way, I'm going out with my boyfriend tomorrow night. Can I borrow your blouse?" It's done a lot more naturally, and like the framing isn't as exploitive.
Yes.
Here it's just exploitation is what it feels like.
Yeah, in the original, like they just seem like teenagers who are. They're just like talking like normal teenagers do. In this one, they're just like constantly fucking moaning. It's just like, how many times in a day are these girls gonna be like, oh yeah? And I'm like, Jesus Christ! It's been 6 hours. Like
it legitimately feels
it's like constantly.
It legitimately feels like Laurie's the only girl in this movie that doesn't have a sex scene.
Yeah, she's also the only one who's actually a teenager, which I'm sure has a like huge
something
part to do with
that.
it. Yeah.
Remember, the Weinsteins were involved with this franchise from time to time, so
no, they were very involved.
Great, that's what I needed.
They were very involved with this movie. Rob Zombie said it was like kind of miserable to work with them, and he didn't want to agree to do the sequel. But he thought, oh, like they'll be better to work with because I created this successful film for them. And he said the sequel was worse because now they were like, oh, well, like we don't want you to fuck it up now. And he said they would like show him clips from the first movie and be like, well, we want it to be like this. And he's like, why are you showing me clips of my own movie? It sounds infuriating.
The sequel just goes off the fucking rails in a lot of ways. Like, the most interesting aspect of the sequel is that Loomis's character framing. He writes a book about everything gets famous, and everybody in the town hates him for exploiting their town's history. And so that's probably the most interesting idea that the sequel has to offer, and I think the sequel has like a 20 or 10 something.
So it just does Scream.
Literally, I was waiting for him to stop talking so I could say this sounds like Scream. That's so bizarre.
Yeah, and then multiple endings were used for the sequel as well, and it's just
wow. We haven't even talked on air about the issues with these, because all of these movies have had multiple endings.
Or most of them, not all of them.
Well, at least all the two that we're talking about tonight.
The two that we're talking about, yes,
had them cataloged. We were having pre-conversation about this because that's what we do when you're creating a podcast lineup, and I just find it so damn infuriating that studios even consider the option of doing multiple endings when they're trying to figure out these fucking movies. Because it feels like, and I'll go on and on about like having things remain thematic and like and cohesive and as like one thorough vision, and it feels like if you're going to change the ending, which is the most important part of any story, Game of Thrones, you have to know exactly what it is.
It's really crazy because when you go on John Carpenter's IMDb, there are so many like very low budget indie films or fan films that are like he's credited in the writing for its like characters based on. I mean, even like there's something filming right now called The Haddonfield Nightmare. It's like we're talking about how like all over the place the plots are for these movies, and these are like major productions. I can't even imagine what the plot is like in some of these like lower budget or like short films and stuff like that.
I feel like plot, and I mean, okay, I was about to give indie film creators a little bit more credit, but I realized that we're talking about Halloween fan films, and also that we're talking about horror.
There's a
film
huge fan culture of just making fan films off of properties like this.
Oh,
there
aware.
Are so many fan films based on this.
I mean, you can take that for any fandom that like becomes this colossal. Like Star Wars is another example of just a stupid amount of fan films that get made all the time for that franchise. And yeah, I think there's something about fan films that I'm like, okay, you know what, Alex, you're right. I can't expect the plots to be any better on those. I was about to say, I usually give the indie filmmaker a little bit more credit because you have to be somewhat of a good storyteller on a small budget, but if we're talking that ballpark, can't side with it.
There's a movie that came out in 2012 called Halloween Existence. And it's like about Mike Myers. Oh, so sorry, Mike Myers. Michael Myers' house being torn down. And it says, on Halloween night, with both his parents out of town, one teenager and his friends are about to discover that when evil finds a new home, it will do anything to claim it. Like, so now we're getting real estate involved? Like, the possibilities are endless. Baby.
Sorry, I had to channel my inner Mike Myers since you named him in that. So now it's a Mike Myers movie to me, not
the spy who Myers. Stabbed me.
God damn it, Matt. Okay. I think with that, we should probably wrap up today's conversation on a high note. So out of curiosity, I just want to know, and Matt, we're going to start with you, but with these two movies, which one do you prefer?
Oh God. I don't know. It's like, I think at this point, for me, is like being the fan of the franchise, there's like 3 movies in this franchise I actually like. So like anytime I do a rewatch, I do like 1 and 2 and then just kind of stop there.
Oh God.
H2O is one of the better ones. 4 is one of the better ones. 2018 has a lot going for it, and I'm curious to see if my view of this movie changes when the 2 sequels come out. The first of which is coming out, relatively soon, and then the other one, it's just like both of these movies get a lot right and then just get so much wrong at the same time. I think the presence of Jamie Lee Curtis kind of gives the edge to 2018 a little bit for me, but I also think that the story being told in 2007 is way more interesting because you don't typically see them do directions like that in a remake.
Yeah.
And then for me, 2018 just feels like this long trend of just this soft reboot BS that's been happening in Hollywood for the last 10 to 15 years, where it's like, we're kind of doing the same thing, but we're going to make the original stuff that you loved irrelevant and just focus on our new shit. It's like, I don't know, Ghostbusters, like just the whole 80s nostalgia thing. So it's like, I can't get that out of my head every time I see the new Halloween.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it's a coin flip for me.
Oh, jeez.
I
was expecting a much harder line from you on that.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. Shit, Alex, I'm going to have to toss it to you on that one. Do you have a definitive answer for this?
I would say 2018. honestly, like, unless you're like a big Halloween fan, I don't think you should bother watching 2007. I will say I think it edges out 2018 stylistically. It's way more interesting. 2018 looks like every other fucking horror movie that gets released, like, you know, between 2010 and probably for the next 5 years, like the Purge movies. They all just like look exactly the same. So I will give Rob Zombie's version that it looks way more interesting. Also, 2018, there's no absolutely horrific acting, and there's quite a bit of that in the 2007 version.
Yes, there is.
Some of it, I think, could be chalked up to the script that they had to deal with, but most of the acting's pretty fucking terrible. So I'm gonna give it to 2018. I did, once I finished the movie, I went and watched the trailer for Halloween Kills, and I was like, oh, like, I'm pretty excited for that movie to come out. But I have to go with Ben on, like, this should be able to stand alone. Like, I shouldn't have to be like, oh, you get through this movie, and then we're gonna get Halloween Kills. Like, that's the treat that you get at the end of watching the 2018 sequel. Oh, Ben, what are your thoughts?
I'm ashamed to have to say this because I really do not like this movie. But again, I think that being boring is more criminal than being bad. So I have to give it to 2007. And I really want to make a point of this. I think 2007 is a movie I will never choose to see again in my life. Like, I will make active choices not to watch 2007 again, but I have to give it points for the fact that I remember what the fucking plot was. And the fact that it actually tried to do something original. I have to give it those points.
I will say, if you want to watch a different shitty 2007 horror film, I really love to hate watch. I've only done it once, but hate watch. There's this movie P2. It's set in a parking garage. And
okay,
it's funny because it's so bad.
What is it? They can't remember which level they parked on?
No, but I wish. That's my own personal horror. But it's like, if you want to watch a shitty horror movie that's like so bad it's good, I would go with that over Rob Zombie's version. But,
I'll take
each their own. We all have our own, opinions about it, and there's plenty of shitty movies in the sea.
Oh, absolutely. And Halloween was just a way to stumble upon a good bit, at least 3 on this podcast. Well, I think that's about it for now. However, everybody, please come back next week as we are going to be doing a full dive in on Halloween Kills. That is right. It will no longer be a pre-taped episode. And also, it will be the last episode of the first season of The Return of the Movie, which is big. It's somewhat, I still have many feelings about it, but we're going to be back after that with an announcement at some point, likely in December, as to when season 2 is coming out and exactly what we'll be covering in that, because we're going to have a little bit more of a structured lineup for everybody to follow for that. So without further ado, we will see you in the next one, and bye-bye.
See ya.
You just can't get away from Star Wars ever. No. It's never gonna happen.
This episode of The Return of the Movie was produced by Matt Kime with music and editing by Benjamin Collins. The Return of the Movie is produced by ABBC Productions and released as part of the Scope Network. You can find more of our content and the rest of our podcast at youtube.com/Scope Productions.